One of those countries where it's becoming more and more difficult to work as a journalist is right here in Europe. That's Hungary. And Fanny Facsar, DW correspondent, joins me from the capital, Budapest. Fanny, Hungary's been condemned by the EU for attacking media freedom. What's the situation been like there during COVID-19?
Well, if you look at the World Press Freedom Index, according to which Hungary is ranked 89th, that's 89th out of 180 countries worldwide, it gives us one indication about the state of press freedom in this country, which has been challenged not by only the current government, but by any government ever since their democratic elections since 1990. But what makes a current amendment of the criminal code so worrisome to some of the journalists here that I've spoken to is the fact that you're not only punishable for sharing or spreading false information, but also for spreading information that is true in a, quote, distorted manner. But what does that mean? Who is defining what distortion means? What does it mean for journalists who are operating here on the ground, trying to report about the consequences of this pandemic? I asked some of these questions to Zoltán Batka, one of the investigative journalists here in Budapest, and he had some very interesting answers to tell me. Let's have a look at the report.
Like most of his peers, Zoltán, an investigative journalist, is confined to working from home.
Strange. This guy, I know him for more than 10 years. And nowadays he's not picking up phone.
But he says it's not staying at home that makes reporting harder these days. His sources have become reluctant to talk.
They know by blood that something can be serious now if they say something wrong on the phone, so they just stop it. Stop it, or they're not really eager to talk about.
Zoltán is referring to the amended criminal code, which imposes a prison sentence of up to 5 years for spreading false information. This provision is part of the emergency powers that have been extended indefinitely. He writes for Népszava, a small daily newspaper with a circulation of 20,000. But papers like Népszava are coming under increasing fire. For the past 10 years, the governing Fidesz party has sought ways to tighten its grip on the media. Here at this newspaper stand, you can still find a variety of newspapers and magazines, but the sphere for papers carrying critical reporting that does not toe the government's line is shrinking. Media freedom organizations complain that most of the Hungarian media is either managed or owned by people loyal to the government. I want to talk to Agnes Orban, who works for media watchdog Mertek, about the new law. Her job is to evaluate media policy measures.
The penal code now sanctions distortion of information that undermines efforts to protect against the pandemic. And this is a big problem because it's not clear what distortion means.
She says the very survival of the independent media in Hungary is in serious danger. And the government? A few weeks ago, Justice Minister Judit Varga spoke to DW News. She outlined in that interview that the new provision applies to every citizen, not singling out any specific occupation. This time, we are told, Judit Varga is too busy to speak to us on this particular matter. Looking at her tweets, she frequently accuses critics of witch hunting. One reads, "The European Parliament attacks Hungary again in its resolution based on false accusations, and it continues to apply double standards." Understanding what's going on in Hungary requires access to many sources, ones that Zoltán would like to continue to tap into. After all, he believes in democracy.
It's a quite strong feeling in Hungary that people want to believe in democracy. They want to give information for journalists still. Yes, they are less eager, they are more intimidated, but there are definitely sources, there are definitely people who want to help. So actually this is a kind of obligation for me to do the job as well.
He will continue to track down sources and help them to speak up, come what may, he says, during these very extraordinary times in Hungary.
Fanny, as we just saw in your piece, Zoltan is struggling to access the information to do his job as a journalist. Is his case unique in Hungary?
Maybe only unique in terms of the fact that there aren't many investigative journalists left actually in Hungary who are working out of Hungary. But it's definitely an example on a broader sense when it comes to journalists who are working from Hungary, trying to depict certain facts, information for the public that are not operating from within media that is either owned by the government or by people that are allied with the government. Now, if you look at the big picture, you may still find critical press, especially online, but if you zoom in a little bit more, that's where you find that for the great majority of Hungarians who do not live here in the capital city Budapest, they have a hard time accessing print, accessing channels on TV that are not allied with the government. And that's where press freedom is very challenging, but also the mere situation of getting information that's not channeled through the government, getting that information through the public is of a challenge here in Hungary.
Fanny Facsar reporting for us from Budapest. Thanks very much.